big news that you announced as well this morning, that the Bundesbank will include the renminbi, the yuan, in its reserve basket of currencies or its reserves. Is this categorically a new development, or is this part of what the ECB announced in June of last year, that they would include the renminbi?
But we have different balance sheets, the ECB and the Bundesbank, and I can only talk for our balance sheet. And round about middle of last year, we made the decision in the Bundesbank to include the renminbi. I cannot talk about the amount we're going to be investing, and I cannot talk to you about the technicalities, how we will be investing, but we have been in touch with our colleagues from the People's Bank of China already maybe half a year ago about this. So we had the ECB go first. That's the right way to do it. Other central banks have sometimes even moved before the ECB. That's also fine from Europe. And now we thought that this would also be should also be part of the German currency reserves. It is not a major amount, but it's something we decided on and we want to be part of. So the fact that the renminbi is now included in the SDR basket, in the basket of the special drawing rights, and the fact that the European Central Bank had decided to do so were both factors we thought about including it.
Of course, through the IMF's review with the SDR inclusion, you probably have similar concerns that the currency is not a free-floating currency. It has restrictions. There are also strict capital controls in China. Do you share these concerns about the currency going forward?
Yes, we do. And nevertheless, we may have to pay part of our monies to the IMF in renminbi. So we need accounts. We need to be able to fulfill our obligations as the fourth largest member of the International Monetary Fund in renminbi. So we are now have made that decision to be in the renminbi. This is not as big news as you may think, but it's a fact that we have decided to go forward.
Sometimes a journalist has to ask the most obvious question, and that is, why include the renminbi at this time?
As I said before, it is now part of the SDR. We have to fulfill part of our quota in potentially renminbi, and because of the ECB also investing in some fellow central banks in the Eurozone doing the same.
Does it also represent the clout, the growing financial clout that China does have, and the need for trade financing, a number of different avenues that they want to have, you want to have this currency in your portfolio?
Basically, as a central bank, you have a currency in your currency reserves to the extent you need it. And it's not necessarily that we do need it in order to fulfill our obligations as a central bank, but it's also a matter of fact that we want to have the accounts in this currency, that we want to understand the market of government bonds, etc., etc. We do share the concerns the IMF has, so the answer is 2 yeses on your questions.
Do you have any clear indication? You said you've had these negotiations for the last 6 months or so. Do you have any clear indication that China is liberalizing its FX mechanisms?
It can go further, and it's their decision. It depends on how quickly they want to do this. They are internationalizing the renminbi. The renminbi is much more used than it was before. Still, there are obstacles. Sometimes there are political interventions. It is not 100% predictable what kind of regulatory changes you have. So there are also some obstacles to using the renminbi, and in order to make it even a more used international currency, more needs to be done. The renminbi does not have an anchor currency status, let's say, as the US dollar or the euro or the yen or the pound sterling actually have.
Right, yeah. So the biggest obstacles, again, would be these restrictions they have in the trading band and also on the capital controls.
Yes, but the international use of renminbi is increasing through the Belt and Road Initiative, because the trade links with China will intensify, and also the fact that now foreign ownership has been liberalized in China. For example, now you can own up to 51% of a financial institution and not only 49%. All of this will make the renminbi a more internationally used currency in the future.
Is this a plan that is being put forward, or is this starting as of now? The Bundesbank will start accumulating renminbi.
I don't talk about timing and amounts, but we have made that decision quite some time ago, and we will execute on our plans in the way we think fit, and we will do this very closely coordinated with the People's Bank of China, as you would expect.
All right. Let's also talk a little bit broader terms about central banks and what some would say the uncoordinated asset purchase or end asset purchases. Should the ECB, in your estimations, set a definite end date for bond purchases already?
The way I look at it is that the economy in Europe is much stronger than it was. Growth has really returned to Europe. It has also now the positive effect on the labor markets you would hope for, and the sentiment is in many countries, including Germany, at an all-time high. So all of this means that the economy is growing not only this year, but next year above trend. Mm-hmm. It also means that that we are closing the output gap and going into the right direction. This is the background for any monetary policy decisions. Whatever is going to happen, we have to be very clear about the fact that we are still in a very expansionary monetary policy, mm-hmm. which is justified because the inflation numbers are not there yet. They're not as negative as seen sometimes, but inflation has had ups and downs, and they're not fully at the price stability target. Nevertheless, whilst we are talking not about braking the car, but we're talking about taking the foot a little bit off the gas pedal, we will still be speeding, but an end date to those asset purchases, I think, would be justified given the economic background which I just described.
So they should set a date for tapering, some sort of deadline?
That is exactly what we feel should happen, and I personally also would argue for that.
Because the ECB pledges to keep its interest rates at the record low that they are now until well past the end of the net asset purchases. That's quite vague. What do you think well past equals?
You know, I'm not going to enter this debate with you, but what I think is right now what we're talking about is not exiting this monetary policy stance, but we're thinking about how much longer will the ECB be buying in the market, and now whilst this amount has been reduced in half since the beginning of this year and the beginning of this month, you still would need to see how much longer are you talking about these sort of extraordinary asset purchases, and maybe an end date would give a change in the forward guidance and would give the markets a better understanding of what we're talking about.
Can we just switch gears a little bit to the Basel deal is done. Now comes implementation, obviously. Are you concerned that authorities, including in the European Commission, could water this down?
First of all, I'm quite happy that the Basel deal is done. Now, this is a compromise. Many people in the United States are not happy with this sort of low number they feel, and many people in Europe think this is a too high a number, and this compromise is hurting all sides, which normally is a good indication that this is a reasonable compromise. So I'm glad that we have regulatory certainty. Now, the Europeans have insisted, including the Germans, that the United States commits to fulfilling all parts of Basel. This in return means that the Europeans need to implement all parts, otherwise that would be a pretty unfair stance. So from our point of view, we think that thorough implementation everywhere is very, very important and is crucial for having regulatory certainty.
Do you feel that the Basel Committee also is going to formulate a position perhaps on cryptocurrencies?
That's not in the cards at all.
Should it be?
Cryptocurrencies, the word currency in this is already something you can debate whether that's right. I don't think that this is something right now for the Basel Committee and for pure regulations, but of course the central bank community is thinking about its stance and what to do. So there are other fora which are debating this, and for example, CPMI is debating this issue, and it is a very, very important issue. My personal feeling is the following. whilst the overall size, let's say, of bitcoins is not very, very large, it is growing at a high speed, and clearly there's also some dissatisfaction with the quality of electronic and digital payments.
Right.
So the fact that globally cash is being reduced and digital payments are being increased does not necessarily mean you have to go to what you call a cryptocurrency. So something we have been working on in the German central bank has been to think about the underlying technologies much more. And in 2016, we developed a blockchain with the German stock exchange in order to better understand what kind of technology is behind this. We are working on all sorts of instant payment and transfer systems in order to make this a more efficient and a more effective market. So something needs to be done, but it doesn't necessarily need to be what you call a cryptocurrency.